So I just gave a reading for somebody who whose child was sensitive, and so I thought I would talk about sensitive children today. I was saying before that when we have babies, I feel they connect with the angelic and spirit realm because their egos haven't formed yet. So they'll be lying in their crib, for example, and then they'll be looking up and laughing at nothing, and I believe that they are connecting to angels into the spirit realm. So last time I was talking about connecting with people who pass away, and I forgot to mention children. And a lot of times people will tell me that their child, when they're a toddler, will be playing in the bath and just say, oh, I just saw grandma, or I just saw my uncle, and they will appear to be unafraid. And I think that it's totally okay. It's nothing to be worried about unless your child expresses that they're scared, which can happen. I did work with a little girl. She was around like 6, and she saw her grandmother, who passed away, very frequently at night, and she was scared, so I worked with her around that. But anyway, just be aware that your children are more psychic than adults typically, and there are many, many sensitive children, and children who are empaths. So an empath is a person who can pick up on other people's emotions without anybody telling them how they're feeling. And most psychics are empaths. I know I'm an empath, and many of you are empaths. It's a way of being intuitive. And it's really challenging. It's because when other people are upset or have experienced, when other people are upset, anxious, angry, and we pick up on that, we can tend to take it on and think that it's our fault, and it's difficult to manage. So as a child, when you're so open and sensitive and you're going to school all the time and you're exposed to so many kids and having to be in class and having to pay attention to teachers and do well in school and all those things, it can be very challenging for a person who's an empath. And children especially don't really understand anything when they're younger. They don't really understand anything outside of themselves. So I remember when I was a toddler, I was around, some of my earliest memories. I remember seeing my mom and picking up on the fact that my mom was upset, and I just automatically internalized it and thought that it was my fault, not because she made me feel that way, but because my world was the only world I understood. So when children and adults, who are sensitive, are overstimulated, or again, like trying to deal with other people's challenging emotions, then anxiety can come up as a result in depression. So this woman, I gave a reading about her son. I could see that he's picking up on everybody's emotions at school, and he's not able to sort it out. And he can tell that he's different. He's more creative. He doesn't fit into he's not into sports. So, but he is he's very creative and emotionally in tune. And so I think empathic children, if you are, like, a characteristic is that they might be highly emotional, so they experience their emotions strongly, and they tend to, I think, take things more personally. It's harder to be easygoing. And so there are several ways in which we can help our children move through these emotions. And one of them is to help them create a toolbox. When I was a therapist, we talked about comfort boxes for children that I worked with who are emotionally disturbed. And when these children would get when they would feel anxious or upset, they would reach a point where they were so upset that they would just become violent. There was something in their brain that was triggered and they weren't able to regulate. And so we created these comfort boxes. So when I do readings, angels will show me how to create like a comfort box to clients for their children who are struggling. And children are, very creative, and empathic children especially can be very, very creative. Oftentimes they might be interested in art, music, building things, and they need a creative outlet. When they pick up on so much stimulation from other people or what they're seeing on the news, or if there's an injustice that they witness on the playground, then they don't quite know how to be able to verbalize it. So if you create like a toolbox for your child that they can go to when they start to get really upset, then that is really helpful. So it's also about building on your child's natural strengths. So one thing is that empathic children need an outlet to express themselves. And I say empathic children, really all children. I mean, all of us, we all need ways in which that we can express ourselves so that we can process our emotions. So something that is very helpful is if you have art supplies for your child, if they like to draw or paint, you have them ready for them in their room where they can go, and you can just redirect them. If you can tell that they're starting to get upset, you can just have them go and tell them to draw or paint or whatever. I mean, there are lots of kids who use their creativity by building Legos, building forts. You can have Legos, puzzles, building blocks all together and direct them towards that. And sometimes kids are creative physically, so you can encourage your child to go outside, go for a run, take the dog for a walk, and play sports. And other children are really soothed by music, so you can have them go to their room and turn on like their iTunes and have a playlist that's very calming, that can help children naturally settle and ground. And another thing are games. So a lot of children will express themselves more if they're distracted. So, I mean, at a certain point, I was a play therapist, and the reason why I chose play therapy as a modality was because a child's first language is play, and they have a much harder time just saying, first of all, identifying why they're upset, and then explaining why they're upset and trying to use words about explaining their feelings and all that does not come naturally to children. We have to guide them and teach them how to do that. So if you have a game that you want to play, and you can just ask your child with kind of an open-ended question, or I wonder what school was like for you today. I know you had to take that math test and you're really worried about it. I wonder what that was like for you. Your teacher told me that you got into an argument at school today. I'd love to hear more about that. Just kind of open-ended questions. And when a child is playing or engaged in a art activity, then it's easier for them to feel less guarded. And so I feel also what I see is for children who love animals, that's like a really healing thing. So if a child has a dog and I see that they have such a close relationship to their dog, and the dog, dogs are amazing, pets are amazing, and dogs especially, I think, can really tap into how we're feeling, that it can be a self-soothing mechanism for the child to go pet their dog. And empathic children, I think, are very sensitive to touch, sensitive to sound, smells, all those things. And another really, really helpful thing to do is to get a sand tray. That's another intervention that we would use as children's therapists. The sand tray automatically is soothing just to feel the sand. And then if you so you can have the child play in the sand and then talk to them and check in with them about their day. Or you could give them different objects that they can use to express themselves in the sand tray. And then they can actually play out what happened. So if, let's say you know that your child had a difficult day at school, if they had different toys that represented like different figures or animals, then you can ask them to show you what their day was like at school. And I think it really allows children to sink into their subconscious and express themselves. A lot of kids who are empaths are diagnosed with ADHD because they're picking up on so much energy that they can't process, it's hard to settle. Again, being an empath can open you up to a lot of feelings of anxiety, and anxiety and ADHD look very, very similar. So you can teach them how to protect themselves from the energy. And I wouldn't say to make them feel like there's something bad that they need to protect themselves from, but it's just, the idea is to have them feel like they're safe even when they're picking up on a lot of frenetic energy. So Archangel Michael is the angel of strength, courage, and protection and clearing energy. And I always call upon him to help me during readings. And you can, if angels resonate for your child, then you can talk to them about maybe each day when they wake up to call upon Archangel Michael. Another really creative thing to do is to ask your child what their favorite superhero might be, or what kind of superpowers they might have. And before they go to school, you can imagine putting on like your superhero like suit with a shield, and that they're going to go to school and nobody can see this, but it's keeping them very safe and protected. And another thing you can do is crystals, I believe, are very healing. And I think people wear crystal jewelry. There are people who actually do crystal healings as body work, as a body work modality. And I feel the power of crystals when I use them when I give readings. And you can give your child like a crystal bracelet. Amber is very calming. There's also hematite and onyx, obsidian. Those are good protective stones. And I'm not an expert. You can Google like what stones are protective. You can give your child like a little, they have these pendants that you can stick a little crystal in and wear in a cord. And if your child doesn't want anybody to see it, you can have them just put it down the inside of their shirt and remind the child that they have that there to kind of help keep them grounded. Teaching children to meditate, doing yoga and breathing exercises is really, really helpful. So as a therapist, one technique that I used to use with children is taking a book and having them lie down on the floor and placing the book on their stomach. And then when they take a deep breath in, they watch the book rise, and then they exhale, they watch the book fall, and that shows them how to regulate their breathing. As I'm talking, you know what I'm really feeling? I'm feeling like, at this point, most children are empaths. I think there's this huge spiritual shift that's happening, and so many people I know are waking up to their intuitive gifts. And I just feel like with this shift, more and more children are naturally coming into this world as intuitive beings. And now we know that, and we can help them. I know for me, when I was little, I couldn't really express what was going on for me. I was constantly daydreaming. I was constantly anxious, worried about my teachers being angry at me, really sensitive when kids, would pick on me or yell at me or whatever. And if somebody could say, oh, Sarah, you were an empath, and I'm going to treat you like an empath and, do all these things to help you feel safer and to help you manage, teach you different ways of being that would help you feel like you can move through life a little bit more easily, then my life would have been a lot different. And I think that a lot of our lives would have been a lot different if we had that awareness. So I'd like to think that now we're becoming more aware, and because of that, we can help our children manage just the chaos of like what's happening universally, what's happening for them personally, emotionally, and then just what they're experiencing with other children. So let's see, another thing that is helpful is to have what I call like a worry box or an angel box. As we pick up on so much that's happening to us, and as kids, there are all these, we start to get racing thoughts. And with all these thoughts, and again, as kids, they don't naturally express them to us because they don't know how. We can have them create a worry box. And so you can have your child make a box, like decorate it, get a shoe box. And again, I'm going to just talk about angels because that's my jam, that's my thing. So at night, you can have them write down their worries on a piece of paper and tell them that you're putting it inside the box, and then that the angels, you're handing it over to the angels, and you can have the angels, envision that the angels are carrying it away and taking care of their worries, which is really what I believe. It's not, you're not making that up. That's what I see is happening. That's why the angels are coming. They're showing us that they're around because they want us to hand up our fears. They want us to surrender our fears and our worries to them, and for us to trust that we can have them transmute them into positive energy so we can start to feel more calm. And I think if a child is going to write down, something that makes them feel worried, it can help you start a conversation with them and help them process more. So I gave a reading once for a little girl who was an empath, who was really struggling socially at school. And what I saw is that there was a girl who was unhappy, probably another empath, a girl who was struggling. She was probably dealing with a lot in her life. And because she was unhappy, she was very grumpy at school. She was, kind of would snap at kids, be mean to other kids. And so this little empath I was working with took it so personally. So I was able to explain to her, oh no, this little girl is upset, she's yelling at you, but it's because she's sad. It's not because you did anything wrong. And I mean, there's this book called The Four Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz, and the idea is if you follow these four agreements, then you can live a very happy, enlightened life. And so one of the four agreements is to not take things personally. Well, we learn how to take things personally when we're really little, but even if somebody yells at us for something that we've done, it's deep down, it's not fully personal because it's how the person is choosing to react to what we've done. And that's leading, which leads to which way they want to respond. So, I think it's helpful for children to understand that if somebody's upset or there's a bully, they are just really deeply unhappy, because a happy child is not going to pick on other children. I just don't believe that. So if you can kind of give them that awareness, I think that would be very helpful. And yeah, I think just kind of being an open listener, reflecting emotions. I think it, especially if your child is saying that they see a spirit, that can be really jarring and scary. So I think it's nothing to worry about if the child feels safe and happy. But if not, I did have a little girl who was seeing ghosts, and we just talked about how the angels were more powerful. She believed that the angels were more powerful than the ghosts, and so we asked the angels to help her, just to help the ghosts, go away, so they would stop bothering her, and then it worked. So for her, it really resonated. And I think if you notice if your child has like a psychic awareness, it's just something, again, to embrace. If your child seems to be concerned because they can tell that you're upset, then all you have to do is explain, sometimes mommies and daddies get upset, sometimes we cry, and that's okay. I think a really big mistake that we make with children is that we think that we can just pretend if we're feeling upset that they can't pick up on it, and if we just tell them we're not upset, then it makes it go away, but it doesn't. Because especially if you're an empathic or sensitive child, then you're going to be like, you're just telling me that you're fine, but I can tell that you're in pain, so I'm confused. So I think it's just okay to say, yes, sometimes moms and dads get upset, and it has nothing to do with you. It's, something that I'm working on, and it's okay to be upset. Then you'll model to them that it's okay for them to be upset, and they don't have to worry if they're feeling anxious or sad or depressed. So we don't need to give kids more to worry about. I think if we all learned how to embrace negative emotions, then we would be much happier people. And so I think that's all I'm going to talk about for today. If anybody has any thoughts or questions, I would love to hear about it. And maybe I'll talk more about empathic children next time. So I hope you guys are having a good night, and thank you for listening to me.